So you get information to relax you, give insight into abundance, and imparts divine guidance. Be sure to call in at 888-565-1470. The Halley Elise Show with intuitive mind spirit mentor Halley Elise is just about to begin. So don't miss even a minute. Now here's Halley Elise.
Welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here today and delighted and excited about the topic. And I wanted to share as well, you've been dealing with me since I returned to the station. However, I do have quite a few folks lined up starting next month, which is going to be really exciting. We have someone who is an animal communicator who will be coming on. We have a gentleman who's an author who basically said goodbye to his dad when he passed, and then his dad said hello. Interesting, yes? Always try to keep it kind of different, kind of interesting. By the same token, backing things up a lot of times with evidential support or experience. And this way you have the opportunity to see it's not all woo-woo. I tease about that as far as practical spirituality and not really having the woo-woo part of it. And when I say woo-woo, please, it's not supposed to be offensive. It's more a matter of, I know some people who are very gifted at what they do, and in certain circles they would be seen as perhaps a little off, a little different. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's an individual and they're entitled to see things from their own perspective. By the same token, it's really nice when there is that melding. And you hear me often speak about that commingling of intellect and intuition, or the other way around, intuition and intellect, doesn't matter. But the point being that we are not just single-minded, we are not just physical beings. There are many things that we cannot explain, and yet there are many things we can explain. It's often a matter of how you were raised, what are your perceptions. And in that light, today's show is about ridding negative energy from your environment to your space, whether it's home, it's office, what have you. Depending on your cultural beliefs, depending on your spiritual beliefs, if a space felt uncomfortable, in some circles, you would put on all white, you would get a bucket of hot water and bleach, and you would scrub everything from top to bottom. That works, but if your mind went to, but that's just cleaning, it's more than that, because the people who used the bleach and wore all white did so with a very strong intention of clearing their space, of creating something lighter. Oftentimes when there's a religious ceremony, you see someone in all white. Nowadays, it's very often to see lots of different colors. But if we think back to way back when, the bride, for instance, wore all white to show purity, to show that she is truly ready for that next step. White represents a lot of different things to different people. However, it is not the only way to eliminate unwanted energy. Sorry, my mind is going faster than my mouth today. What I'm saying is, when you find that you are conflicted in a space, you walk in and you can't put your finger on why it feels uncomfortable, your intuition, your inner guidance system, your connection to the divine is giving you a little poke and saying, hey, pay attention to this. Look at what's going on here. There is something that is not regulated. There is not something that is making you feel uplifted. That means you need to do something about it. And again, a lot of times people have no clue. They walk in, it feels uncomfortable, and that's it. Over the years, I've done a lot of house clearings, though they were for really adverse situations. For instance, there was, let's say, a death in the house, and the people moving in were very ambiguous about how the space felt, how they felt. And you could say, well, it was their own emotional take on it and what they were imbuing the space with. However, that wasn't it. When you walked in, you could actually feel what was going on in the space. And I'm not going into the idea of mediumship here. I'm going into the sense of when you look at science, science supports that energy can be felt. It can be measured. Again, head going faster than the tongue today. What my point is, this is not just, oh, it's an abstract idea, or somebody's just feeling bad, or they have a predisposition about something. It really has a lot more to do with what they are sensing. The distinction is, are they sensing it on a metaphysical level? Are they sensing it on a physical level, a visual level? There's lots of levels, yes? You could walk into a space with a certain device that would measure frequencies. In the same way that we have devices that measure EMFs, we could measure other energetic frequencies. The point that I'm getting to is, this is more concrete than we may recognize. And unwanted energy, like great energy, lingers in a space. I'm sure the majority of you could say that they've walked into a space and thought, ooh, feels really nice in here. Whether it was a cute little boutique or a restaurant or someone's home. And conversely, I'm sure many of you have walked into a space where you've said, I don't know what it is, but I don't like this, or I'm uncomfortable, or it doesn't feel good in this space. You'll notice that a lot of the metaphysical shops that have lots and lots of crystals and gemstones, when you walk into their space, it feels good. And you could say, well, it's the incense, or it's the topic that they're discussing, or. However, the crystals themselves have a particular frequency that they put out. The music that's played in the space has a particular energy, a particular frequency that is being emitted. All of these things contribute to how a space feels. And all of those things, even when they're gone from the space, leave their signature. And this is why some homes, when you're looking for a new home, for instance, you walk into and you go, wow, this is gorgeous, but I don't like it. There's something off. It doesn't feel right. It has everything I need. However, it doesn't feel right. It's because either the previous tenant or perhaps the previous person who was in the space had something that was not quite right. The idea, though, is to not only clear a space, it is to imbue the space with the energy that is going to uplift you. Another thing to consider is music. Ever hear a song and it just makes you want to get up and dance and rock and have a great time? What does that do to you? It makes you feel good. Yes, it makes you feel happy. It gets your blood circulating. It makes you just smile. Playing the right music in a space can do that in the same way that playing very soft music can do that as well. You can play soft music and it just relaxes you. It has you shifting into another environment, mentally and physically. You'll notice that when we work with meditation, work with hypnosis, or go to an alternative doctor, oftentimes they have meditation music or healing music or some sort of instrumental, sometimes referred to New Age music. All of these things, even classical music is amazing as to what it can do with its frequency on the brain. All of these things, all of these types of music create an environment. And it's not an environment that you say, oh, I'm feeling this with my fingers. It's an environment that you sense on a more attuned level. And we all have that within us. We all have that capacity to connect with our environment. The focus really, though, is, let's say you walk into a space, nobody passed away, you've had your own home for years or your office, and it just doesn't feel right. And you're thinking, what is this? I don't know why. I'm not feeling good. You might want to consider, have you brought something new into the space? I'll share something which you might find interesting. I had someone call me some time ago. They loved antiques, and often they would purchase new antiques. The couple that I went to had 2 little boys. They were great kids. They had just moved into a new house. The house was beautiful on a great piece of land, lots of plants, a lot of the gemstones that we're talking about were in the space. These folks were pretty harmonious in their interactions, yet from the moment they moved into the home, their youngest could not sleep, just no longer slept. And when this child did eventually fall asleep for a few moments, had horrible nightmares, and they couldn't figure it out. They invited me in, and thankfully I had guess just simply because I'm hypersensitive, I have the ability to kind of be directed to what needs most attention. And I walked over to this one piece of furniture, and I knew that the people that had owned it previously were miserable, that getting rid of the piece was a miserable experience. And this particular piece was right outside of the child's bedroom. Long and the short of it is, I asked the couple, did this piece just recently come in, and did you buy it from it? I kind of filled in some blanks, and they were looking at me as if I had three heads and said, yes, how could you possibly know that? And I said, it's actually got that feel about it. The space is not the only thing that needs to be cleared. The item that you brought into your home is emitting a particular energy, a particular frequency. So think of it this way. If you have an argument, you're spewing, right? I mean, really give some thought to this for a moment. You're spewing when you're angry, when you feel as if you've been wronged, when you feel as if you're not being heard. That has a particular feel to it. Somebody coming into the room can automatically, even if they didn't hear anything, tell if something doesn't feel right. The furnishings in that room, think of them as a sponge. They absorb whatever is going on in that space. Now, most of us have both good and bad things that show up all the time. That's what life is, right? We have moments of tears that are sad, and moments that are joyful, and moments that are excited, and everything in between. Though if you're dealing with something such as this piece of furniture, for instance, that all of a sudden came into your home, and you noticed afterwards that your home felt off and nothing else changed, then it would be common sense to look at that piece of furniture. I know a woman who bought a piece of furniture from her girlfriend who had lost her daughter. Perhaps maybe it was a couple of months earlier. The furniture, she didn't need it. She was selling off the pieces. And this friend of mine went ahead and got the piece. It was a beautiful piece. She put it in her place. And that evening, it was as if she had a cold chill. She couldn't shake it. There's just something not right. And she knew. Not because she investigated, not because she deals with energy, not because she's hypersensitive. She just knew it had to be that piece because she always had a very harmonious environment. She decided to get rid of it. She had it gone within a few days, and all of a sudden her home felt the same. Again, it's not limited to just furniture. You want to clear a space, you want to consider what's taken place in that space recently. You want to consider, has there been anything new that's been brought in? Has there been an argument? Was there someone sick in this space? All of these things are considerations. And a lot of you have heard of the whole idea of take some sage and smudge the space. And if you're not familiar with the term smudging, it basically means allowing the smoke from the sage stick, which is wrapped sage that has been lit, the smoke billows, and you bring it around the room. That's called smudging. Now, people think, are you kidding? It's smoke. You just lit some sage on fire. You think it's going to make a difference? Here, we're supported by science again. The sage creates negative ions. Negative ions, I-O-N-S, not I-R, actually transmute the space. Something to consider, right? Because you're thinking, oh, this is silliness. How often, though, in our history do we find something that seemed to be an old wives' tale, or it was some sort of tradition for a different culture, that it has some validity when we actually research it? This is one of those things. And that brings me back to scent. That brings me back to the idea that if you want to clear your space, it is not just sitting in the middle of the room and going, okay, I banish whatever is here. Sometimes that's a necessity. And if you're thinking that's like over the top, that's okay. But it's a matter of you making a very stern choice as to what you will allow in your environment. And that's where that command comes from. It's not a matter of, oh, I have to yell at the thing that's in the space. No, it's a matter of you taking charge of your environment and saying, this is not working for me, so I need to be in charge. I am making that command. I am banishing because I am in charge of the energy in the space. I am in charge of what's taking place with me, with my household, with my loved ones. Again, applicable in an office or really any other environment. A friend who also does clearings, who's a shaman, who's run into some interesting stories. If this was like a 2-hour show, I could share, but if anybody wants to know a couple of funny things, go ahead and get in touch with me later. I'll be happy to share some of them. Bottom line, we all have the ability to exert, to exude. We all have the ability to receive and acknowledge, intentional or not. Give some thought, and we will take just a moment for a break, and I will give you some real easy tools that you can use at home and real easy ways of lifting the vibe, if you will, in your space. So when you walk in, you're like, ooh, I'm a happy camper. We'll be right back with the Halley Élise Show.
Tune into the Halley Élise
Hi Jay, how are you? Nice to see you, honey. I see bring them on camera. Oh, that's interesting. I'm reading what's going on here on the phone as best as I can. I want to say hi. Hi Bobby. Hi Cassie. That's Teresa. Hello. Am I missing anybody? I want to make sure. You like that commercial? Ooh. I'll be right back.
Mind Spirit Mentor, Halley Élise, WWNN, Saturdays, 4:30.
If you have any questions, be free to call in, 888-565-1470. I'll repeat it again in a minute.
Back to the Halley Élise Show with your host,
I'm just watching my tech there.
Halley Élise.
Welcome back. We were just talking about clearing your space. If it felt off, if for whatever reason, whether you could identify it or not, it just didn't feel right. You wanted to lift the space. You want your space, really, especially at home, you want it to be your haven. You want to walk in and feel enveloped and protected and loved and welcomed. And if you are not feeling that, then you might want to consider some of the following things. The same thing, again, is applicable in an office or even in a loved one's space. We were talking earlier about if there's an emotion that took place, if you brought in a new piece of furniture, if there has been havoc, if someone's ill, it also can affect the space. If the place is dirty, and that sounds funny because you're thinking, oh, come on. So what, if the place is dirty, it has an energy? Yes, matter of fact, it does. Dust has an energy in the same way that light has an energy. Everything on the face of the planet has an energy. It's just a matter of what frequency it is vibrating at. Some faster, some slower. Some we perceive, some we don't. Some we perceive on a subconscious level, others on a conscious level. And what's really fascinating is the majority of things that you can perceive on a subconscious level, you can perceive on a conscious level simply with a little bit of conditioning for yourself. Perhaps we'll do a show on that one day. For now, I want to share that if anybody has a particular place that they're dealing with and you have a question about how to take care of it, feel free to call in. It's 888-565-1470. Also, if there's a dying question that you have as far as something going on in your life and you'd like a psychic answer, feel free also to call in. It's 888-565-1470. Now back to let's clear our space, let's lift the vibe, let's make it feel great. There is a reason that you are attracted to color. Specific colors you may love, or specific colors you feel drawn to. Specific colors elicit a mood, an emotion. It elicits a vibration. If you're looking at your space and you've thought about who was there, you thought about your emotional state and your family's emotional state, or your friends or your roommates, you've thought about, is there plants or not plants? Are there crystals? You've gone over everything, right? But you're still not feeling well, or you feel off, or you're feeling as if you need a lift. Look at the color in your space. Now, there are particulars that are attributes for each color. However, like always, we are individuals. We have that original thumbprint, right? A gray can mean neutral, and that's the attribute that we give it. However, if you hate the color gray and you have a lot of gray in your space, think about it psychologically. Let's even take away the energy part of it for a moment. Think about Your mind, your thought pattern. If you look at something that you dislike and you're constantly looking at that thing that you dislike, it's going to create an energy of its own. Think about color, think about style. Now, let's say you're in your space and you've had it the same for 20 years, you've loved it, but all of a sudden you walk in one day and again, you've asked yourself, has something significant changed? And nothing has. It may simply be that you need to move things around. That shifts the moment, it shifts the vibration. That thing that you've been looking at for 20 years that seemed to be okay in front of you perhaps needs to be at a slight angle. It's breaking patterns, and breaking patterns means that we are changing vibration and energy. But let me give a very concrete example. This way it'll be helpful to you. Wherever it is that you're going into, whatever that environment is, if you walk in and it feels unpleasant, first thing you do is look around. See if anything in particular stands out that doesn't feel right. You don't have to even have a reason why it doesn't feel right, but just look around. If there's something that doesn't feel right, make a mental note of that particular thing. If it's more than one thing, that's fine. Make that mental note. Then close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath. Do you notice anything about the scent of the place? Does it smell funky? Does it smell too sweet, sour? And an example is you walk into a restaurant sometimes and you smell the sourness of the bar rags. My light just went out if you're wondering if you folks are watching. But take a look at that as well. So you've looked visually, you've smelled. Now walk around and actually touch the items in the place. For instance, there's a statue that you've had that your great-grandma gave you, and you've always had it because great-grandma gave it to you. But in this moment, when you put your hand on it, it just doesn't do anything for you. And again, it may simply need to be moved to a different area, or it may be time for it to leave. But touch. What I'm going over here is so simple. It's engaging your senses. And I know that you're catching that, right? You're looking, you're smelling, you're touching. Close your eyes, listen. What do you hear? Do you only hear the hum of your air conditioner or the refrigerator? Is there some noise that seems to be distracting you or bothersome to you? Notice also on your lips. In that moment, while you were in that environment, do you taste anything? Is there something off? Or is everything okay? Once you've engaged your 5 senses, then engage your 6th sense. Now, those folks who deal with feng shui, there's 5 different areas, or I should say 5 traditions that I'm aware of. So there are many ways of looking at it. However, they all will suggest that you engage your intuition. And doing that is as simple in this case as closing your eyes and just feeling. Just sense, just feel, just be still in that moment and ask yourself, what do I need to pay attention to? You may find that all of a sudden you get this really funky feeling that over in that left corner, behind that beautiful sofa, behind that beautiful lamp, something's not right. And you're thinking, what could possibly be over there? But you go over and you look and you go, oh, that's not good. And there was a bug that is now deceased in that corner. And you think I'm kidding, but something so minute, if you're sensitive to your space, can throw you off. And something so minute may need to be cleaned. And that's all that is needed in the space. 6 senses. We have 6 senses. We actually have more, but again, that's for another time. What I'm trying to get to is, you want to raise the vibration in your space, you find something, great. If you don't find anything, you've looked and everything looks fine to the eye, and even intuitively when you get quiet, you're just not picking it up, start clapping. Literally, start clapping. Again, you're breaking up the atmosphere, you're breaking up the space, you are moving energy around. That starts to shift, to change the environment. Put on some music. If when you're in the space you're feeling a little bit down, put on dance music. If you love to sing, start singing. Make use of what your talents are, make use of what you're observing. all of this is so simple and such a delight to use, because as you start to do this, it makes you feel good. If you're looking around and you're feeling a little bit off, a little sad, light a candle. Light 10. Bring in some more light to the room. You see what I'm going for here? All of these things actually transmute the energy that is in the space. Really very simple to do. Bring in crystals, gemstones, and not because you have to have a massive amethyst cathedral sitting on your table, but perhaps you throw a couple of crystals in the corner. And just so that you know, clear quartz will actually expand energy. If you're loving something, bring in some quartz. Rose quartz specifically has to do with love, universal love. You want more love in the space? Bring that in. As you can see, it's a lot less complex than it may sound to clear your space. Think in terms of 6 senses. If you do that, you'll find that it's really simple. You can use your sense, you can use sounds, you can use movement, you can use taste, you can use color, you can use plants. Plants are really great as far as observing, and I actually mean observing, not absorbing, but they do absorb also, but observing. Plants are very sensitive. If your space feels great, a plant will thrive. If your space doesn't feel so great, plants tend to die or not do as well. These are things you can use. If you run into a place that is over the top, really you've tried everything, it doesn't feel right, give me a holler. I'll be happy to come in, because sometimes you need to shake up the energy in a different way. And there are little rituals that you can do so that you are more grounded in the space and that the space is taken care of, so that everybody who walks in goes, oh my, it feels so good in here. Because after all, isn't that what you want when you walk in? You want to feel good, and you want those that you invite into your space to feel good as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next week. If you've been watching live on the live feed, feel free to leave some comments. I will go over everything after the show. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye.